Welcome to Virtuous Society. I'm your host, Itamar, here to learn from experts and great minds about all things community. Today, we had the pleasure of speaking with Brian, the brand marketing lead for SoRare. SoRare is a platform that revolutionized my understanding of Web3 gaming. They offer an immersive fantasy sports experience using Web3 technology, focusing primarily on football or soccer, with additional products for MLB and NBA. Brian shared the importance of transparency and communication, especially in building a product that aims to cater to millions of users all over the world, and how they overcame many challenges and built a community that is second to none in Web3 gaming. I want to thank Brian again for joining us. Enjoy the episode. Hello, Brian. It's a pleasure to have you. How are you?
Well, thanks for having me, Tamar. I'm doing great. I'm doing great at CC next week, so doing great.
Nice. Perfect. It's not going to be next week once we publish the episode, but that's fine. Now everyone knows. So, can you introduce first and foremost, like, just what SoRare is about and what does your role mean in the SoRare ecosystem?
Yeah, I'll do the medium, I would say, size introduction to what SoRare is, but we basically the founders, they were in crypto in 2017, and they realized, they discovered NFTs, and they thought, what are things that we collect offline that would make sense to have, and to bring online, backed by, NFT technology. And they were both massive football fans, and they thought of, collectibles and sports cards, a bit like Panini cards. And so they thought of, creating officially licensed digital collectibles of football players. But because these collectibles are actually online, you can actually give them some form of utility. And the utility here is a gaming utility. So these collectibles are not just collectibles like you would have paninis, but they also gaming items within a fantasy football game. So SoRare is really the mix of, on one side, football collectibles or sports collectibles, and on the other side, fantasy sports mixed together. And we've been building this since 2018, end of 2018, and it's been a very, very exciting journey.
It's funny that you mentioned Panini cards. I thought that it will come up later on during the conversation, but I'll just jump straight into it now. So, SoRare was my red pill into Web3 gaming. Like, that was, for me, the moment that everything clicked. And it starts off with those. So, I was, and still am, a card collector and or investor or whatever you would like to call it. But I enjoyed trading cards like for a while before I got introduced to Web3 gaming. And I understood the concept of NFTs in like the high level, but there was always this discussion about their utility and whatever, and I didn't fully understood it until I got introduced to SoRare, because that's where two worlds that I understand very well kind of collided. It was first and foremost the collectibles world, and second, the fantasy sports world, where I built my first community in FPL, in Fantasy Premier League. So that was for me the perfect storm, and everything kind of clicked. And I think you really kind of changed my perspective for sure, but I'm sure that many others' perspective about what an NFT means and what it could do, because you are very much ahead of your time during that entire timeline of weird NFTs pretty much booming everywhere. So I wanted to kind of ask about that. You achieved remarkable success, especially in the first few, not necessarily few years, but in that bull run of 2000, pretty much 2020 to maybe 2022. You seem like a remarkable success. What has been kind of the most exciting part of this journey, and what was the biggest challenge?
So I mean, just to come back to your introduction, it was the same for me. It all clicked with SoRare because before SoRare, the only NFTs I knew were collectibles. And I didn't really understand why collectibles through NFTs were interesting, and the most famous NFTs back then were crypto kitties, and I didn't understand um, you know the whole euphoria around CryptoKitties and why people were buying CryptoKitties for 40K, 50K, 100K, etc. Um, and as you said, like they were very early, Nico and Adrian, because as soon as they saw CryptoKitties and they learned about it, ERC 721, they immediately thought about SoRare and what it means not just for collectibles but for gaming. And I think that's a beautifully crafted and designed mix of worlds. But to come back to what was the most exciting, um, even before 2020, it was very exciting because we were, to launch Zor, we needed IP, intellectual property of football leagues, football clubs, hence football players, and so we had to go and convince the different leagues, different clubs that they could give us their IP, or rather like sell us their IP for this weird, fantasy game with, digital cards. So that, I think, every single club that we signed, every single league that we signed back then in 2019 was a massive win for us, because we were so early stage that, going from one league and, two clubs to three clubs to four clubs, etc., meant a lot for us, and also helped us sign more clubs in the future. So, for instance, I remember early 2020 when we signed, Juventus. It was really really exciting. It was our biggest club back then, and I remember we were
Ronaldo as well.
yeah, Ronaldo was playing Juventus, and I remember writing a press release saying, the first ever, NFT card of Cristiano Ronaldo,
Yeah.
which to some extent I wasn't really allowed to do because, we didn't have any rights with Cristiano Ronaldo, but you kind of do things when you're a really small startup
Yeah.
that you're not always allowed to do. And it got us our first like kind of CoinDesk article, and I would say wider international recognition. And once you had signed Juventus and Atletico Madrid, it was easier to sign Inter Milan. It was easier to sign AC Milan. It was easier to sign all the others. And it kind of snowballed like this for us in 2020, and also snowballed because of COVID. And so the football clubs, they needed new revenue streams at a time where there was no more ticketing revenues, no more football being played around the world, and we were coming up to them saying, hey, like, we this new game, and we want to buy your IP and get it for multi years, on a exclusive basis, etc. So I mean, the whole 20 to 22 was very very exciting, but even outside just the crypto kind of bubble, it was a very exciting phase for us. Obviously, the fact that crypto was booming was exciting and challenging for us because certain things like in 2021, so we were on the Ethereum L1, and what we had decided to do back then was to subsidize all gas fees for our users. Why? Because we had the belief that if you want to build a game that will attract millions of users, and also users most outside of the crypto sphere, you needed to make it easy for them. You needed to abstract the complexity of crypto, and so we were subsidizing everything. But in 2021, gas fees were super high, even in 2020 during the famous DeFi summer. And so we were spending tons of money on this, and it also meant that we had massive demand for our cards, but we couldn't really mint new cards. Back then, we had one unique, 10 super rares, and 100 rares maximum per player per season, and we wanted to release limited cards. But the issue there, and limited cards, it's 1,000 cards per player per season. But the issue there was that, obviously, if you have the rares, they more expensive than the limited, etc. But again, the issue was that since we were on Ethereum L1 and gas fees were super expensive, just creating a card, creating a token cost us like something like $100. So if like we were creating a token at $100 that was going to be sold at like $10, like it didn't make any sense
Only sell Mbappe's. That's the
yeah, only
that's
selling
the
that.
solution. Only Mbappe's.
Exactly. Exactly. So we were working at the same time, for instance, with a lot of different chains to see where should we go to scale this, and we decided to work with Starkware back then in 2021, and we onboarded in Starkware, StarkX. So it's like ZK rollups. And we started working with them in July 2021, and we were able to launch, our new series of cards limited in August of 2021. So that was one of the, like it was exciting, but it was really hard just to scale because of the tech complications that we had.
Interesting. I didn't know this. Like I didn't know you subsidize for the transactions. I can't recall because it was pretty much my first year or so really being in Web3 gaming. I think I joined SoRare in 2021. That's what I think. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, that's a lot of challenges. That's a lot of technical challenges with rapid growth that you didn't necessarily expected. So what would you say makes the SoRare community specifically special? And how have you kind of nurtured its growth?
Uh, the community is special because it's so engaged. It's like a community of people that are football fans, and there's nothing more engaging than like a good football game or a good a good sports event. So that's one thing. The second thing is obviously, they get to own these cards and truly own them and truly own these items, like you do in Web3 gaming, and it's not the case in Web2 gaming. And so that adds a layer of engagement. And and at the beginning, to be honest, like the community was still relatively small and growing, but it was growing fast, and so I think everybody was super excited about being a part of something that was getting bigger and bigger, getting approved by different leagues, getting recognized, getting funded, etc. So there was the community was just absolutely crazy. And our Discord was it was growing so fast that we had lots of community driven discords and initiatives and side games and
Mhm.
different things like
I
that.
won a few.
So huh?
I recall. I won a
Exactly.
few. Like I
Exactly.
think
So
the pretty much like the score predictions. You had like 5 games, predict the score. You had
yeah,
a lot of like the engagement back then. It was crazy. It was nothing like I've ever seen. I'll be
yeah,
honest. So
yeah. So from day one, to be honest, the community was crazy because the two co-founders they decided that that the community that it would be a kind of community built game, and just do a lot of user interviews, be very close to users and get as much feedback as possible from them. And so back then with the first cards, we first launched the marketplace before there was a game, so we had to kind of go somewhere. And so we first started with just building the cards, building a marketplace, selling the first card in a marketplace, and there's no game, but we always told the users there will be a game. That's the vision.
that's the objective. Yeah.
And so we had games on the Discord with the cards, but we had no game, we had no data for the players. So like the data was computed manually by the community and
That's
Discord,
crazy.
a bit like fantasy sports at the beginning. If you go
Yeah.
back to the history, to the early story of fantasy, it started with fantasy baseball, and people were
Spreadsheets.
computing the exactly spreadsheets and
Yeah.
newspapers, etc. So it was the same thing but with Discord. So I think it's just something that is cultural in the company, especially through Nicola, the CEO, that we've always been very community driven. But for sure, like once the community starts growing a lot, there's challenges with scale, and it's a different conversation.
That's for sure. So you mentioned challenges, so let's go there. So obviously, like you've been here for a while now, you've seen some ups and downs. What would you say was the biggest challenge overall?
I would say, to be honest, so I would say scaling. It's very broad, but scaling, we grew so fast that it was expensive. One example is, for instance, we had so many new users coming in that the price of cards really increased a lot. And for us, it's good to have stability in the market, because a stable market is a healthy market, because a very fast growing market means that potentially at some point market is not going to grow as fast, and so we couldn't really control these things. So scaling, just growing meant learning how to scale quickly. And back then, when we were 2020 and 2021, there was 5, 10, 15 people in the company.
Really?
So we had to scale internally, the
Initially.
number of employees and team members, etc. And so that was difficult to scale internally, but keep, I would say, everybody on the same knowledge based. When we were 10 to 15, 20, 30, up to 30, I think everybody in the company was doing customer support, meaning that everybody was talking directly to customers through
Mm-hmm.
customer support, which was great. But then when you start being
Okay.
100, it's hard to maintain this and do this. And you obviously want, everybody to keep on talking to your customers, but it's a bit more complicated, and it depends on who's very passionate about the product and who's maybe a bit less passionate, etc. So that's one thing. That was one challenge. And the other challenge with scaling was scaling the community. Like, how do you have a growing community, and a community that's keeps on being positive, keeps on being helpful to each other, rather than being resentful on certain things. Like, the early users, for instance, the early users had it easy because back then you had lots of rewards. Now it's different, etc., etc. Certain things like that that can happen. And so that was another big challenge too.
Nice. Interesting. There are a lot of interesting dynamics just because you're simply here for so long. Like thinking about like 2017, that's like in Web3 gaming years, you're a dinosaur. You're like you're you're way beyond everyone else. So it's very interesting to see how, like, I think now maybe from our perspective it's a bit different. From my perspective, it feels like now it's like the third wave of SoRare users that are stepping into a product that is more stable and more mature, I would say. And I pretty much got in the boom. Like, I saw everything kind of, I saw the entire thing blew up, which was crazy. And you had the users that were kind of the OGs that pretty much came in the wave before me. That's how I'm viewing it. Is it correct? Or
Yeah, I mean, the OGs. I guess anyone who was there before 2021 was there at a very different time, where we had fewer IP, where we had during COVID, since we're a fancy football game, and there was no game being played. We had to reinvent ourselves and do things differently. And so what we were doing is that we were replaying fancy game weeks from the past, with players that you had, and so, or that you bought, for instance. And so we kept on having a game, and we kept on, actually, despite this very truncated fancy gaming experience, we kept on growing, because people were also interested in collecting the cards, etc., etc. So yeah, these were, I would say, the OGs. Obviously, we had the 2021, 2022 boom, and then everything that came after that. And maybe more from a strategic perspective, I think in 2021, 2022, we benefited for sure from the boom around crypto, and everybody was kind of thinking like, how can I use my crypto? Like, what are NFTs? Like, what are different use cases? And so SoRare was one of these use cases that creators, media, etc. were talking about, and so we definitely benefited from that. Um, but since then, and even back then, our idea was always, okay, like, what's the end goal for us? And the end goal is to attract pure, engaged sports fans, football fans, NBA fans, MLB fans. And so what we did is, everything we've been doing from a product perspective has been towards the end goal of how can we make sure that this product experience appeals to these sports fans as much as it appeals to crypto fans. And today, if you go into SoRare, you don't see any crypto anywhere, you don't see any ETH anywhere, you don't see any of that. And you can do everything in fiat if you want. But the reality of the game is that, the items, the cards you collect, you'll truly own, and you'll be able to do whatever you want with it. You'll be able to withdraw it on Ethereum, sell it on OpenSea, use it in other games if you want, etc., etc. So that's the beauty of it.
Nice. That's perfect. So I want to kind of go back to your uh, early influences and your journey. What inspired you to pursue a career on Web3 gaming, or was it just pretty much the opportunity with SoRare? Like, what was your background before that, and how have you joined SoRare?
Yeah, before that, my background was in crypto. So I was working crypto from 2016, and I was working in a place called La Maison du Bitcoin, which was the first ever Bitcoin center in Europe. And it was in Paris, and it was a
Obviously
physical.
Spanish for anyone that didn't pick up on the accent.
Yeah, it was a physical center where we were hosting meetups, where we were selling crypto, where we had our offices, etc., and a co-working space. It's the center where Ledger was created, and so it was the same company that let then Ledger the hardware wallets. And you know, I was back then. I was the marketing director of this place, and through this, I was able to organize events and just meet the whole community of people building around Web3 in 16 and 17 and 18, etc. Um, and invite people from overseas. And so that's how I met Nico and Adrien. I met them because they wanted to do a meetup on NFTs. And back then we never done a meetup on NFTs. Like NFTs was like a niche within a niche, like a niche within crypto. And for me, I still didn't really understand what it was, to be honest. So when Nico called me and said, "Hey, like, I want to do a meetup," and back then he didn't even call it NFTs; he called it crypto goods, because there was kind of like no name for it yet. Like NFT was the technical name, but it was still like a massive debate within the whole crypto community as to what should we call it. And some were saying crypto goods, others were saying NFTs, etc. And so he started this meetup called Crypto Goods, Introduction to Crypto Goods. And SoRare was there, CryptoKitties was there, so Dapper Labs, who later created NBA Top Shot, Decentraland was there, and a website called nonfungible.com. And that meetup happened in October 2018. Um, and yeah, Nico was already presenting SoRare. The company was incorporated in December, but he was already working on it. And so that's basically how I got into it. I just, met Nico, absolutely loved what he was doing, the idea, and then absolutely loved the CEO, Nico, and then, kept on working with him, and helping him raise funds and do more in the future.
Interesting story. Interesting to see like the pretty much the entire gang meeting up and
Yeah,
kind of presenting what pretty much like 3 years later took over the world,
yeah,
which is nice.
yeah. It
Um,
was fun days. Yeah.
nice. So, how has your experience with Sorel kind of shaped your understanding of the role that the community is going to play in the success of the specific project with Sorel and every Web3 project?
Um, so so maybe just to rephrase your question, like, do you mean like what did I learn in terms of community building, or like how to work with the community to, like, build a big Web3 game?
Pretty much. Let's take it from there. Like, what was the role of the community, or how do you view it now in terms of the success of the project?
Yeah, I think it's again, from day one, everything was built with the community. If I take how we first built the community and had a community of people that were our first supporters, there was another Web3 game back then. The first Web3 sports game is called MLB Champions, and MLB Champions was the first ever, I would say, Web3 game that got uh, an intellectual property partnership with a big sports team, league, etc., the MLB. And that was maybe in 2017, early 2018, and then the projects kind of fell through. But there was a Discord of users there, and there was a happy bunch of people that were playing this MLB game who were just big fans of the idea of sports, crypto, fantasy. And so Nico kind of first went to recruit the first SoRare Discord users, not users, but members in the MLB Champion Discord. And, just saying, hey, like, I'm Nico, I'm going to build this thing. Would love if you guys are interested in football, fantasy and crypto, feel free to join this Discord. And that's how it started, and I think that was, again, instrumental in how he built the game initially, because he was kind of sharing in public to his Discord in terms of how the game would be built, and getting some feedback from these super hardcore early users who were ready to follow a guy in a Discord and provide their time and experience and to Nico. But then after that, I would say that all the growth that we got was really thanks to the community. So, for instance, today and back even in 2021, for instance, 70% of our growth was community driven. It was referrals. It was what we call affiliates, but like it's like creators talking about the game, etc. So we've always been super, I would say, thankful, but also dependent on community love, because that community love was what got us new users in the game. It's just by word of mouth. Um, so very instrumental, and there's definitely things that we could have done better, and things that we did well, but at the end of the day, like, this is really like a community led growth and community led product, to the extent that it's led by, it's the feedback from the community is instrumental, but at the end, the company take decisions on what we're going to do based on all the feedback that we get.
I think that's, like, from an outside perspective, you can share more about it. It seems like SoRare is kind of forming those deeper connections between not just users and the product, but users and themselves, because there is that element of just like the fantasy sports element of competing against your friends or against everyone, really, which I think the side games on Discord added to the fire, which was already burning quite strongly with the game itself, with the pro version, because we now have the Rivals version as well. So I wanted to kind of ask, did you made any like conscious decisions in order to deepen the connections between users and the game through like different events or systems like the referral system or whatever that you saw that actually like worked really well?
Yeah, I think you know the whole thing around SoRare is also, how can you bridge the say online world and the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
And it is at the heart of the product because the gaming product is about real
Real world stuff, yeah.
football and fancy football. And so fancy football only works through the
Mhm.
real performances of players on the field. But what's kind of digital and virtual is like the lineup that you build, which is a lineup that you know a normal coach wouldn't be able to build because they don't have this roster. You have your own roster. But that connection is super important, and the way it's done with the community is that what you win playing SoRare is also a lot of physical experiences. It's also a lot of shared experiences with that are experiences that you can only dream of. For instance, meeting Zinedine Zidane and playing five-a-side with him. Going to the Classico VIP just behind the
Mhm.
players, and being 10 meters away from the players in the bench.
Mhm.
And all these experiences
Memories,
that
yeah.
we've provided over the past 3-4 years have been to some extent shared experiences because community members meet up there. Recently we did a experience for Liverpool card holders, top Liverpool card collectors. Liverpool. We had some special fancy tournaments where you could win this experience, and the experience was playing at Anfield at the end of the season, we were just bringing the community together because all these people that were playing are SoRare users that won the experience of playing there. So yeah, there was a very conscious decision in terms of how we gather the community online. That is, through Discord, through Reddit, through our Twitter and our Instagram, but also even through the products. You follow different users. You can see what users can customize their profiles with badges, skins, Hall of Fame cards, etc. And it's kind of a passport of like who you are. Like if I look at your profile on Story tomorrow, I might realize that hey, like he's a massive fan of
Liverpool fan, yeah. You can see the
Liverpool.
Liverpool inquiry
Exactly.
for sure. And the fact that I'm not giving Xavi Simons I have the number one Xavi Simons, the limited one, or the first one
Nice,
that was ever made. I'm not giving it away to everyone. Like
nice. So that's
like
it.
recently, I'm getting bits like every 2 days or something, and I'm not selling it to
Yeah.
anyone. So yeah, that's mine.
But that's it. Yeah, he's probably going to move to Bayern Munich apparently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Xavi Simons, fan, Liverpool fan, and I think just being able to see the information about other players, seeing what they do, being able to trade with other players, being able to find their Twitters, their Discord profiles on the product. All of that just like kind of fosters a real relationship. And I think finally the last thing here is the whole trading mechanism and so is also very fun and very exciting because if you want to trade with someone, it's very hard for us to have a chat on the product because it's chats are complicated from moderation perspectives, etc. But if you trade with someone, at some point you might want to have a chat with them and kind of negotiate cards and how you do the trade, etc. And so like that needs to happen somewhere, and so that happens usually in Discord or elsewhere. But that whole thing kind of helps communities form themselves of people that are like-minded. And so we have the French community, the Italian community. Obviously that's always the easy community to build, but also a community of people that are playing five-a-side football thanks to SoRare because they met through SoRare, they know they football
Nice.
through SoRare,
That's
and they
cool.
play
That's
five-a-side
really cool.
football. So things like that.
That's really cool. Having a five-a-side like Soul Degens team, love
Yeah,
it. Love the
yeah.
idea. So just reflecting on pretty much your entire journey building the community, what would you say are the key learnings? Because you've been through a lot of ups, downs, everything in between, a lot of cycles also. What would you say are, let's say, two of the most major learnings that you had?
Um, I think the most important learning is um, trying to be as transparent as possible. is very important in building community trust. And this is something that we've always tried to do, is always try and give all the information that we could, by, for instance, releasing source code of, rewards
If you
algorithm,
think,
or but despite that, there was always, some form of conspiration that, maybe we're not doing things the way we said we were doing things. But I think, like, being the best way to build trust is by being fully transparent, and this is maybe easier when you're five than when you're 150, because there are different things at stake happening. But that's always what we've strived to do, and that's I'd say a massive learning. And if I had to share a second one, um, you know, try and explain your decisions whenever these are being challenged. And so sometimes we probably poorly communicated on certain decisions, or certain things were not communicated and happened, and that led to uproar on the discords and things like that. And I think, we've always, you know when you communicate and when you over communicate, people will, even if they don't agree with you, will always respect that. And so
mhm,
that's really, really
that's for sure.
important. And in our instances, when we poorly communicated, or didn't communicate, it was probably because we were so stretched, and some things were happening without, maybe people internally knowing about these things
Shit.
happening. So yeah, those would be the main
Nice.
learnings.
Yeah, that's a good one. So, what are some of the, let's say, trends and developments that you could possibly see kind of shaping the future of both Web3 gaming and Web3 communities? I think one thing that we're seeing quite a lot of is a lot of play to airdrop campaigns, kind of being the flavor of the month at the moment. Obviously, not necessarily something that makes sense for SoRare, because you don't have a token. Your economy is very different, I would say, than other Web3 games. And I think it makes sense because your product is very different than other, let's say, more traditional games. What are some of the trends that you could possibly see in the future?
Yeah, I think we the most Web 2 game that's,
Yeah, for sure,
Web 3
100%.
infrastructure. So this is definitely what I'll defend, because for me, I don't see, Web 3 gaming winning by doing airdrops and going more into tokenization, than it currently is. I see Web 3 gaming becoming a mainstream genre by having, games that cater to mainstream audience, and having like a killer game that, onboards tens of millions, hundreds of millions of users, with some Web 3 flavor in it. And so, we still don't have this game as of now, and I
I would
think,
say you guys were the closest to that.
yeah, we're the closest, and we want to be, we want to be that game, but I'd say, it's still not the case, and there's a lot of things to do together. But um, if I take our example, today in SoRare, when we sell you a card, or when you buy a card, an NFT, like a real collectible, it is a non-fungible token, but it's a non-fungible token that's built on layer two, on Starcore. And I think, out of all our users and community members, out of the people that have cards, probably 0.1% of them have taking the decision of, withdrawing that card, or, minting it on that one and withdrawing it. And that shows the interest around, like, having these cards as, pure L1 items that you can move around, and sell elsewhere. And that's absolutely fine. I think, at the end of the day, the reason why we do that, it's for the promise. But then it's up to you to unlock that promise if you want to. And I think too many games today are being built around oh, let's make something that's, super tokenized, and then let's build a cool game. Whereas it should be the reverse. It's like, build a cool game, and what can, Web3 tech bring to this cool game, if something at all. And in our case, it's really like, Web3 is at the service of the game. It's just a tech that we use that enhances the experience for our gamers,
Very nice.
but it's not what we're selling. We're not selling
Yeah.
tokens. We're not selling airdrops. We're not selling any of that. Otherwise, most sports fans wouldn't join our game and wouldn't want to be part of it, because they don't understand that world, and they want to play a game. They want to play a football game, an NBA game, an MLB game. So that would be my, it's not one specific trend. It's just like the wider trend of build fun games, and users will come. And you can only call your game Web3 if you're using Web3 tech, but only use it if it makes sense within the use case of making your game cool and fun and exciting for your users. So yeah.
Put the fun in the front, pretty much.
Yeah.
Nice. So just to like finish us off, if you could start all over again, what would you do differently from a community perspective?
I think this thing around, the early users so were, advantage, and, the OGs, they earned, they were able to get so many rewards, etc. It's always been tough to manage, and I'm not sure. I would say probably it's just like, how could we have changed that perception, and how could we have, made things better at some point within the community? And I don't have the answer, but it's been something that's been, tough to work with at some point. I think now it's different, but back then there was always this kind of
Yeah, people complaining about
jealousy.
the snowball effect, pretty
Yeah,
much.
jealousy towards old players. And so I think, like, it's how can, within the game design, maybe can we make it more fair for everybody, and not for new users to feel that they are at a disadvantage compared to old users. And so, if we had more time to think about that in terms of,
I think it's
improving
very
the first
difficult
time user
to,
experience, yeah, like, it would have been, I think, beneficial for everybody, even for old users to some extent, because more new users that are happy was, at the end of the day, also good for the yearly community, because you
yeah,
want to be playing this game with as many people as possible.
I think it's interesting because you're pretty much like, it's kind of asking you guys to have like the very long term vision once you are trying to bootstrap and get people in, and being like, okay, we will unlock one unique or something every month, isn't something that is going to pull people into the platform, which is needed in order to grow it. So it's a bit like the chicken and the egg. So it's difficult. Like the community is obviously, some of them will obviously be upset about it, but those are those are the users that were there to build this entire platform that now everyone else using. It's tough.
Yeah,
It's for sure tough.
100%. Yeah, it's pretty tough.
Okay, that was amazing. I want to thank you very much for being there and taking the time. We will for sure have a round two,
Yeah.
probably like in a couple of months, maybe 6, maybe whatever, I don't know, but we will have a round two for sure. Uh, before we kind of end, uh, I think there were a lot of valuable insights that seems to be a repeatable concept with the people that I'm interviewing, which is transparency above all else. Kind of transparency and communication. Not too much transparency. Not there is probably no such thing as too much communication, but that's probably the most important takeaways from, well, I would say for me thus far, conducting those uh, conducting this podcast and having these interviews. So I really want to thank you again. I want to encourage all of our listeners to first and foremost go and follow SoRare, follow Game7 also, so why not? And follow your socials. Do you want to share your Twitter?
Yeah, My Twitter is at Bruhagan. So it's BRUHAGAN. And yeah, follow Sawyer socials if you want to learn more about the game. Sawyer.com, SORARE.com. And yeah, let me know in the comments what do you think.
Perfect. And if you are new to SoRare and you don't know anything about it, feel free to log into app at game7.io and check out pretty much the onboarding. Like we have a quest line for SoRare. It will get you introduced with everything you need to know in order to get going, and you will also get some EXP and other fun stuff. So I want to thank you again, and I want to remind everyone that each and every single like follow or like or subscription really helps this platform grow and helps us get even more interesting conversations in the pipeline and more interesting insights and more value back to you guys. So I want to thank everyone for sharing, subscribing, and following, and to encourage you to do so more. So thank you, everyone, and we will catch you on the next one.